Hey guys, I'm Amira and welcome to Open Up. This is your communication podcast and I am your host, also known as the communication expert. I'm your podcast host, your life coach, and also a speaker. Each and every single week, I'm going to be bringing you conversations to help you level up the way that you communicate, whether that's with yourself or in your relationships. Through each conversation, you're going to leave with food for thought, skills that you didn't know you needed, and ways to develop your relationships. So join me here as you learn the lessons that you didn't get to learn at school. Pull up a seat and join us as we open up. Today, I'm joined by the self-development coach, aka Johnny Lawrence. He's a certified behavioural change coach and also a very sought-after speaker. Today's episode is filled with an openness, an honesty, and a permission slip to be who you truly are. We look at why humans feel the need to control and where that really comes from, how we actually learn to regulate our emotions, and his relationship with alcohol. No matter what is going on in your life, no matter what chapter you're at, this is going to be an episode you will not want to miss. Johnny, I know we're giggling already. I'm going to give context to this.
No, don't. We're just going to sit here. You're about to watch us giggle for the next, hour?
With a hell of a lot of value. I'm so sorry. Giggles and value today, okay? All right, first of all, I want to say welcome. I want to officially say welcome. Thank you. I feel like we've done a whole entire podcast before we've even hit record.
I know, I'm really tired,
Don't bring that energy here. Sorry, you're going to have to exit, okay? I want to officially welcome you. I want to start with a thank you and a whole heart of gratitude for being here, for your time, for your energy, and for trusting me. And I'm adding even more weight than I usually do with my guests because also you've travelled far. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that more than you know.
No, I appreciate you inviting me on because I know that, time on your podcast is precious, and you invite people and, I feel very validated right now. So thank you.
I only like to invite the best. We're putting it out there. And I'm just letting you know that season 5, all my guests are always fire, but I always try and push the boundaries every single season. So it's reciprocated.
No, I'm a massive fan of what you do. Massive. So, time to come up here and hang out, time to be on the podcast, time of you, I'm in. So,
thank you. So as I think one of the first coaches on the episode, there is so much I want to pull out in terms of your expertise, in terms of your journey. And I know it's going to be so packed. I always say to every guest as well, you can come back for part 2. So we're not trying to cram everything into 60 minutes. That's the first thing.
Okay. I'm good with that.
Let's start with change. The fact as well that as a collective and as a world, we've gone through significant change in the last few years.
Yeah.
And I usually say that as humans, we find change incredibly difficult. But it's funny because when I run an Instagram poll or I ask people, I get so many people saying to me, Mira, I love change. I'm like, yeah, theoretically. In practice, let's see how you do.
Yeah.
So I want to start by asking you, as humans, what is it about change that we find difficult?
My belief is that it's the fear of the unknown. I think it's that fear. I think most of the time when people embark on doing anything and it doesn't go according to plan, fear is usually somewhere in the equation. Fear of whatever, and there's so many things you can be scared of,
Yeah.
That's why you see a lot of angry people that are changing because they think that they've got a problem with anger, but they don't. They have a emotional reaction of anger to whatever they're feeling, their original emotion. So they might feel resentment. They might feel embarrassment. They might feel inadequacy. And their response to that or reaction to that is anger, and that's what they're dealing with. And the thing about anger is when you have the anger emotion, when you feel angry, you are looking for someone to blame. And then you blame somebody and you feel resentment and then you blame yourself and then you blame somebody and you blame yourself and you just get stuck in this little cycle and you feel like, and that's the other thing, anger is an energy emotion, right? So it makes you feel like you're doing something, but you're not. You're staying in the same cycle over and over again. What are you angry about? That's a helpful question. I'm angry because I feel embarrassed. Okay. What's made you feel embarrassed? And now we're working towards a solution, right? But I think yeah, a lot of the time people have emotional reactions to the idea of not knowing what's going to happen. The fact that they know something's going to change, but they don't know how it's going to change. Is this thing going to work? Is it not going to work? Am I going to fail? Am I going to succeed? Whatever it is. And it's all this energy and anxiety. And it's like, I don't want to do anything. I'm just going to stay in bed all day, and do nothing. But I think to counteract that, there are two things that I've found. And actually, two of them, the most powerful things I found have been this year. And it was when I climbed Mount Toubkal in Morocco and I got altitude sickness. And that sucked. It was really, really bad. I felt like I couldn't tell the difference between a headache and a stomachache. My body just was attacking me and it was savage. And I was with a former SAS guy and he looked at me with compassion and said, up or down? And I was like, whoa, okay. that's the right question. Delivery we'll talk about. But
can we just adjust the tone, please? Yeah. Because I need that a little bit softer.
But it was the right question. And it felt like an hour went by, but it was just literally a minute. And I decided I was going to go to the top. I made a decision. I was like, I didn't come here to do this. I'll come here to go to the top.
Okay.
And an amazing thing happened is that the whole way up that mountain, I was suffering. Suffering and I was thinking, am I going to quit? What's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen. But as soon as I made that decision, I knew I was going to the top. I accepted all of the pain. I was like, this is just how it feels today. This is how the pain is, and this is the thing about change, right? Change is hard. Change is always hard. I don't care what you're doing. It's always difficult. At some point, if something's got to change, you're going to meet a crux point where you're going to be like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, or I don't know what's going to happen, or I'm nervous, or I don't want to meet that person today, or I don't want to do that presentation, or I don't want to do whatever it is, right? And you're going to have that moment, and that's your moment right there. Are you going to step forward, or are you going to step back? And I stepped forward and I accepted all of the intense, and it was horrible. It was bad. Like I was 3 steps and stop all the way to the top, but I accepted it. And there's a photograph. I've never posted it because it's out of context. It looks weird. There's a picture of me in absolute pain, but smiling because I'm just like, this is it. I'm doing it. Right. That's alive. That's feeling alive. Right. So the first part of it is making a decision. That's the hard bit. Yeah. It's making a decision. And then the next part of it is accepting it's going to be hard. Because the fact is, we spend a lot of time when we're trying to change looking for the hack, looking for the easy road. What's the easy diet? What's the easy workout? What's the easy way to learn this YouTube reel thing, whatever, real thing. See, I know what I'm doing. But
we can wing it. We're here for it.
Yeah. But, it's, we're always looking for the hack. And actually, a better way to spend the energy is to put it into accepting that it's hard and preparing for that hardness, preparing for it to be a tough day today. It's going to be a tough day today. It's just going to be hard. And just putting that energy into that. Like, imagine I go into the gym, right? And I'm trying to find the easy way to work out. And then I'm complaining I've got no results. It's just like, because it's hard. Some things are just hard. Most things are just hard. Change is always hard,
I love this for like about 1 million different reasons, okay? One of my clients, a million, literally, there's so many things I'm going to pull out of this. First thing I'm going to say is one of my clients this week, actually, I think it was my first session of the week, and they only told me this at the end of the session. This is like one of my clients I've been working with, like very, very good relationship. To be fair, I've got a good relationship with all my clients, but just one of my well-known, like we've done a lot of work together. And they said to me at the end, I did not want to have this session today. I was like, sorry. And like, we're working on hard stuff. That's what I want to say. Like, it's the inner stuff. It's the uncomfortable stuff. It's the like, I've got to force myself to show up. And I was like, okay, tell me why. And they were like, because this is hard right now. And I've put it off since like our last session. I was like, that's fine. But you showed up today. And then sometimes at the end of a session, I'll ask my clients, depending on what we've covered, like, okay, well, how are we closing this? Like, how do you feel? Because I want them to acknowledge it. And they said to me, surprisingly better. Like, I'm actually glad I showed up. But if you asked me an hour ago, I dragged my feet here and there was no part of it, Amira, that I wanted to be. And for me, I have so much gratitude for my clients for the fact that you still showed up. And also, sometimes that is enough. Like, in that moment, or for the beginning of that session, one, I didn't know. As much as I pick up on energy, okay, I didn't know it was that bad.
Well practiced at hiding it, right?
Yes, right? We're so good at masking. And And it was just like a really beautiful reminder off the back of what you said in terms of like, it is hard. And I always say as well, as humans, we're not good at sitting in the discomfort or what's uncomfortable, whether it's, I know I talk so much around like conflict and hard conversations, but whatever it is, that hard thing. And I think when we connected, it was around the time you did your trip, because I remember the way I was going to tell the story was like I was there and I was like, no, I watched it through your Instagram, okay? But in terms of like being able to accept that it's hard and sit in that discomfort, a few years ago, probably many years ago actually now, because I forget how old I am, I trekked in Nepal.
Okay.
And so I didn't get altitude sickness, but I got ill. And similar to you, there was a point where, so unfortunately, nobody asked me down or up, because I would have been like, let me exit the building, okay? I don't know if I would have, because I like to think that I'm determined. But I think this is a really, really beautiful way to look at change and accepting the hardness and sitting in the discomfort, because we didn't actually have a tour guide. And my two friends that I was doing it with had done this trek a couple of times already. And they were on this like really cool trip together. And yeah, it was amazing. I just went to join them. And I remember being so ill one night, and the next day was like getting to the highest point we were going to. But in order to do it, we were going to go see the sunrise. I think it was like 4:30 in the morning. I think I'd got to sleep at 4 because I was so ill. I was just throwing up.
Give me PTSD here, man.
Yeah, I was like, sorry, because I just really, when you shared it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I remember that. And when you said as well, it was like 3 steps forward, and then it was like, just pause. And I remember for an hour, you were climbing stairs to get to the sunrise. So it was just one step after another. And a lot of people, wherever we were staying, you just stay like at, I would say Airbnbs. That's not Airbnbs in the middle of Nepal, but you get the idea, okay? And you just kind of, you all left together. Obviously, there's only so many routes you're going, so at some point everyone meets and you make your way up. And I remember there was just like this trail of people, and us guys as friends had no like headlights or torchlights, and I literally was just one step in front of the other. And I remember for the whole hour I cried up it. I cried, and I was like, right now I don't give a shit how good that sunrise is. I feel so ill, but mentally I remember saying to myself, all you can do is one foot in front of the other. And also, you actually generally can't go down. So you have to keep... It's harder
sometimes, isn't it, to go back than it is to go forward.
Yeah. And so just as you shared that, and I remember just feeling so awful.
I feel sorry for you, man. I know how that feels. And it sounds like you know how it feels. So something we're resonating on, you know, and I had a particularly rough year the year before. Some personal stuff happened that was really hard. And I had some seizures.
Okay.
I had some seizures. I forget what they call it, dissociative seizures.
Okay.
And when I was talking to the doctor about it, they said, wow, that sounds like a rational response to an irrational situation. And what I'd come to unpick in therapy was that being tough, being strong might look good, might look like a good play, right? But when you become so good at it that you just don't own your feelings or emotions, it's a problem, because your body will go, we can't do this anymore, Johnny. Lights out. And that's what happened, you know? And I was working through all of that stuff. And when I got to the mountain, the thing about mountains is hard, right? Is it cold? You know, are your legs hurting? You got a headache? You feel sick? I'm not going to change for you. I am a mountain. You will change for me or you will go down. Up to you. I don't care either way. That's what mountains do. And
sorry, we need that analogy in the analogy bank. Yes, I'm here for that.
That's what it was. The mountain is the mountain. It's not going to change. And you either you're going to go up there and you're going to evolve and you're going to change and you're going to adapt and you're going to find out stuff about yourself, or you're not. Up to you. Mountain doesn't care if you do or doesn't. You know, it doesn't care. You know, so I'm up there and there's a little part of me going, this mountain's kicking my ass, man. I don't like it. So I'm like, where's the fighter in me? So I found it and I got to the top. Didn't look anything like I thought it would. I thought I'd be skipping up there to see the sun come up. Nope. That's not what happened. So, but that's life, isn't it? And that is another thing about change. You might want to get somewhere. You might not like how you get there. It's up to you though. You know, you might not like how you get there. All the disappointments, all of the things that you have to do and say and places you want to be and all these different things, right? They all come up and they're all really difficult, and they're all points where you have to see, am I going to compromise myself? I haven't yet, but I'm not a fortune teller, so we'll see. But change doesn't always look like you think it does. And someone asked me a little while ago, is change always possible? I said, yeah, it is. And they said, oh, but what about this? I said, it might not always look like what you want it to, but it is always possible, and that's it. Sometimes we get attached to an idea of how we're going to do it. Oh, I'm going to change, and this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to climb a mountain, and I'm going to do it skipping up there all happy and see the sun come up. Not today, you're not. That's what happens, and that's what happens with people. We're always trying to move towards something, and we don't realize that, like sobriety for me, I look at my sobriety as it was the 29th of November in 2020. But people say, oh, you've been sober since then. I said, no, but I've been on a sobriety journey for 2 years before that, when I was trying and failing. It's only now I realize that, without those attempts, I wouldn't have learned enough to be able to be sober for 3 years, So I'm grateful for all of those, even though at the time they sucked. And I felt like I was failing. But now I look back and realize they were important, and I wouldn't take them back for anyone,
I mean, we're going to get into it, right? Because you've dropped fear in there, you've dropped emotions in there. I want to talk about how you regulate emotions, the fact when you don't acknowledge them, compromising who you are. I mean, you're just dropping all the wisdom, okay? First thing I want to ask then, because I feel like we're going to move on from this, but in terms of change, and you focusing as well, like in your area of expertise around behavioural change, given everything we've just shared and how difficult it can feel, and how as humans we probably don't want to sit in the discomfort, and especially when I had a conversation this morning actually about like being attached to either how you're going to do something or like how you want it to look, which comes down to control, right? Which also links back to fear, because why do you, and I see this show up with my clients, whoever's going to listen to this episode, they're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Because the need to control comes from like your fear, whatever your fear is, whatever your fears are, right? And instead of moving through that, because I never say it's about face your fears and like get through it. It's actually like, how do you want to move through it? How do you want to get used to sitting in the discomfort? How do you want to acknowledge those emotions? Because I think, I'm diverting slightly, but for me, one of my hardest things, like growing and doing like my inner work, was getting honest. Like I had to take responsibility. And this was from somebody who thought she already took responsibility. I already thought I had ownership. But to get honest that that's how I feel, or like, well, I've stopped myself doing that because of what I believe about myself. Like, that's really confronting. And one, you can't change or do anything until you kind of do that step. But then, going back to the fear as well, and that fear of control, is okay, well, why do you need to control? If you don't control, what you scared is going to happen, because that's usually the thing that you're avoiding. Yeah,
absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. It's about being honest with yourself. The thing is, right, as soon as you tell yourself a lie, or let's be more kinder, let's say you create a narrative that you can accept, that appeases your ego and all the different things operating within you. As soon as you do that, everything else that happens after that is also a lie. You don't own it. It's not reality anymore. You've just done a little subplot off somewhere, because if you tell someone something that's not true, or you tell yourself something that's not true, you're not working with reality anymore. So it's all waiting to go wrong, really, in a sense, or waiting to evolve in a certain direction, and it might not be the direction that you go in, and all because you wanted to avoid an uncomfortable emotion. That's it. You wanted to avoid an uncomfortable emotion in that moment, either disappointing yourself or disappointing somebody else, whatever it is. So you chose to tell a lie, or say something that wasn't true, or be creative with the truth, whichever it is, right? And from that moment on, you're not dealing with reality, and you can feel it. You can feel that anxiety of like, oh, now I've got to make up something else because this isn't true too, and then this doesn't make sense, and you're just in chaos. You're in chaos. And what people don't realize is that, in things like yin and yang, right? So getting spiritual, right?
I'm here for it.
No, but you see the white and the black in the middle, and the black and the white in the middle, and I think it's Jordan Peterson talks about it being the relationship between order and chaos. And it's like, this is what we need to accept, when we move forward in life and we're trying to move in a certain direction is that within all chaos is order. There's a path forward somewhere within there, right? But you're focusing on the chaos. So focus on the order. And the same thing happens when you've got order. Watch out now, because chaos is there too. And chaos goes, oh, everything's going really well. Okay, cool. I'm not going to make sure your car doesn't start today. Or I'm going to make sure that your friend loses their job or someone gets sick or something like that. It's just life. This is life. We can have these plans, but then life says, oh, there's this thing, and you're like the other day, I knew I was asking for it really because I had all these plans and always ambition to do something on a Monday. And then I get up and I go downstairs and I like to do my Peloton in the morning and all that sort of stuff. And I'm walking down, I can hear the kid coughing. I'm like, wait. Next to know, he's got their school, all plans have to change, and that's life. That's how it works, and that's what I mean. And I just laugh and go, oh yeah, there's the chaos.
You're like, thank you for that one.
I had it all set up. Of course I did, and that's it, that honesty with yourself. And you talk about control. There is a thing that I think everyone should come to terms with, that we are never in control. We are never in control. And as soon as you start telling yourself you're in control, guess what you're doing? Telling yourself a creative lie. Because you're not in control. You're not in control. You're doing a podcast with me today. Well, I just decide I'm not going to turn up. Control gone.
You know what? I'm going to let you in on a secret, okay? Right. I always prepare in case my guests, not as in prepare as in what I would do, but I think I just create space that it's a possibility. Because also this is coming from somebody who, I love order, all right? I am also just really super organized, okay? But when I first, because when I know you're going to rip me for what I'm saying. But I think going through like my earlier seasons, it was like the control of like making sure everything ran like clockwork and making sure that like every guest turns up. And I remember like last season, one of my guests didn't, but told me at like 6 a.m. And I was like, what am I going to do? And I also didn't have the brain power to even like make a decision, but it's just a really, really good example in terms of, there's so many things out of your control. And whilst I'm always working on that, there's a bigger piece of me that's at peace with, okay, like your plan didn't happen on Monday, or like your working day wasn't the way that you envisaged it. And it happens. And I'm looking at my business manager because I think there was something the other day. I think even like I never miss an alarm, and I missed an alarm, and I knew I needed sleep.
I bet you were so angry at yourself as well, weren't you?
Do you know what? If you asked me a year ago, yes.
That's progress, man. That's really good.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean I wasn't annoyed, but I wasn't the level of like angry that I would have been 12 months ago.
Get that.
I also really needed the sleep. And so I was still annoyed because in my head, I was like, you just lost the 3-hour block of work. And I knew once I'm then going into like where I say I'm giving energy to, I was like, cool, when is that getting done? And my business manager was like, okay, cool. You needed the sleep though, didn't you? So even though I'm like proud of how I dealt with my emotions internally and the anger actually wasn't there, I was like, oh.
You should be. That's really good progress.
Yeah, I mean, that's been hard work to get to that space.
It always is. It is. And, I think the problem comes when we label it, when we try to apply a label to it, right? So things like imposter syndrome, things like perfectionism. Perfectionism's perfect, actually, because... I
was like, please tell us more, because I've got a really big thing about labels.
No, labels are helpful for understanding a situation, but they should not define you. They should not become your glass ceiling. They should not become your excuse or anything like that. They're there to understand. And the problem with labels is that they can just overcomplicate things. Like imagine, like you've got imposter syndrome, right? Now, we all accept it. We all get it. It's a term, right? I don't really believe in it though. I'm just not buying into it. I don't believe you. Like imposter syndrome, what you mean is you're scared. Now, scared, we can do something about. But imposter syndrome, you've got a syndrome now, have you? Like you've got this really self-diagnosed weighty term that you've put on yourself now. You've got imposter syndrome and there's nothing you can do about it. You've got it forever now. It's imposter syndrome. You're going to have to work with this now, right?
Yep.
That's who you are. You just go on that person that gets imposter syndrome.
And it becomes part of your identity. Exactly. And then it's even harder to shift it.
Yeah. And then you know what else you wait for? You wait for the imposter syndrome too.
Yeah,
It's
because you're preempting it.
I'm here without imposter syndrome. Something must be wrong. Doesn't make sense, man. So, and it's the same with perfectionism. You're talking about fear. You're scared of something. You're scared of rejection. You're scared of, most of the time with perfectionism, it's a fear of failure. So, okay, if you call yourself a perfectionist, that means that in every situation you go into, you're a perfectionist because you have to be the perfect perfectionist, right? So now you're going into every situation trying to be perfect, but you're not. You've stopped trying to do the thing now. You're now just trying not to be a failure, which is a whole different game.
And exhausting.
And exhausting. And you can't not do something. That doesn't make sense. It's not an action. It's a non-action. So you're just on a path to nowhere on that one. And then you're going to use that. You're going to fail because that's what you set yourself up to do. And then guess what you're going to use as evidence next time when you talking about being perfect? You're going to use that and all the other ones that you've done, So don't bother labeling yourself. Just look at the situation that's ahead of you. Today, I've got a conference and I'm talking in front of 400 people and I'm a little bit intimidated by that. Find me someone that's going to disagree with you as that not being the most normal reaction to that ever. You see all these real famous people that do talks, or these £5,000 an hour people, whatever. They're still nervous. Like the day that you stand up in front of hundreds of people and talk and you're not nervous, you probably shouldn't be doing it anymore,
I love that. And I really, really second that as well. I think as well because I get asked a lot these days, like, Amira, do you still get nervous when you get up? I was like, I get nervous anytime I'm doing any part of my job. But it's also, I care. And it's the day that if I wake up and I don't feel that, something's wrong. But there's a difference as well between me sitting in that old cycle of like fear and doubt and genuinely believing that I'm not going to be able to deliver, to me being able to stand in my power and say, I'm feeling nervous. I'm feeling nervous because I want to deliver and I want to add value and I want to do a good job. But also there's an element of trust that I'm going to get up and I will deal with what's going to come. It might be the best time I ever speak and it might be I could do better.
No, everything's a winner, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like every time I have the imposter syndrome conversation with a client, I congratulate them. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I say, I've never met a successful person that hasn't had imposter syndrome. So if that is true, which it is, then surely that is a sign of success. And they're like, never thought about it like that. Then I tell them my fish story.
Do I know that? I don't think I know the fish story.
So
I was like, you can't drop it in.
I just wondered what you do. You're like, don't play with me, Johnny.
Can you see my face? I'm like, where are we going with this?
Yeah. No, I like to use the story of a fish being swimming in the ocean and it's near the shore and the tide goes out. And they get stuck in a rock pool. But at this point, the sea is only half a foot away from the rock pool. So the fish has got a choice, right? It can stay in the rock pool, bury down deep, but it's limited in resources and it's easy pickings for predators. Or it can do something really, really scary. It can become a fish out of water. And it can crawl across the sand, gasping for breath, with seagulls looking down on it for a really short period of time, but then it's in the ocean. And when it's doing that little crawl from the rock pool to the sea, it's gasping for breath and it's thinking, this was the worst idea ever. I can't breathe. I'm a fish and I'm not in water. And what is going on? This is mental, right? And then all of a sudden it reaches the ocean. And then what's in the ocean? Infinite possibility, loads of options, loads of things you can do, right? But you've got to be that fish out of water first. That little bit there, that sand between the rock pool and the sea, that is imposter syndrome. That's what it is.
I'm sorry, but we need a moment for that. I am so glad you shared that.
I thought I told you.
No, you haven't actually told me that story.
I told my kids that.
Wait, I'm taking that one now. I'm just going to let you know.
Man,
I will.
It's not mine.
But it's such a beautiful analogy. And actually, one, it was super emotive. So I feel like it will, guys, if you didn't write it down, write it down. But sometimes it's helpful to have an analogy to describe like how you feel as well. I was going to go off on a tangent about imposter syndrome, but I'm not going to because there's something else I wanted to come back to that I feel we're talking about without me actually addressing it. We're talking a hell of a lot around fear and emotions and avoiding emotions. Now, for somebody who's now sober, and is it fair to say hasn't always been the person that's acknowledged how he's felt?
Yeah, it's very fair.
Tell us a little bit in terms of how well that worked for you.
What, going sober?
No, not acknowledging your emotions.
Yeah, it was a car crash. It was horrendous. Hence me drinking. My purpose of drinking was I outsourced my emotional regulation. I had an uncomfortable emotion that I wasn't able to or willing to have. And as soon as it got to a certain point, and I always use the analogy of it being like indigestion. And then I would use alcohol like Gaviscon and just go, nope, not having that emotion. Don't know how to have that. And that's the thing, right? It took me a very long time to accept that I had been through some really, really bad things as a kid. It took me a really long time because I didn't know anything else and have any other examples of it. I just thought that was normal. And I was like, wow, life's hard, right? I accepted that life was hard. And there's one of the things that the story that broke it for me was, and I've never said this before, so yeah, here it is. It's I remember when I moved out of my family home, and I've told before why that happened and how that happened, so I won't bore people with that. But I remember my brother, being brothers, right? He was like excited. He had like we used to have 3 in a room, so he was really excited. And he was like, "Yeah, man, we get to wallpaper, and like we don't have you grumpy, in here anymore." And I was like, "Cool." Anyway, he said, "I want you to help me wallpaper." So I go back there when my dad wasn't there, and I start stripping the wallpaper off of him and everything. And I don't know why, I just started in the corner that my bed used to be in, right? And I'm taking the wallpaper off, and I see this writing on the wall, and I was like, "What's that about?" So I start taking the wallpaper off, and it says, "My name's Johnny. I'm 8, and I want to die." That's what it said on the wall. Yeah. So I brought that to therapy, and she was like, we need to talk about that. And I was just like, okay. So from maybe, I don't know if it was any sooner than that, it must have been, but from 8 years old, I wanted to tap out, So somehow people go to me, "Oh, alcohol, that's really bad, and I say, it's not. Because I remember when I got there and the therapist said to me, "Congratulations for finding a way to stay alive," and I'm grateful for alcohol. It helped me emotionally regulate until I was old enough, I suppose, to work out how to do it for myself.
I was going to even swap, which is naughty of me to do this because it's your story and not mine, okay?
Let's change it up, man.
But
different character. Can Denzel play me?
Denzel called us. Well, when you said, until I was like old enough, but I was just going to say until you were able, right? Or until you learned those tools.
Yeah, that is a better way of saying it, actually, yeah.
Because I always say as well, like, I think people are surprised if I give you like my age range of clients, it's from 21 to like 65. And that we're all human and that we come to things at different times. And is that it sounds like, because I never want to talk about your experience as though I was there, because I wasn't. But it sounds like at that point, when your therapist congratulated you, that you didn't have the tools in a healthier way to be able to regulate. But as a coping mechanism, you found a way to be able to regulate through alcohol.
That's exactly what happened. And that came in when I did move out and I found that I was lonely. I was really lonely. I missed the chaos, right? So I found that alcohol helped with that, and then it became alcohol's quite helpful. It helps me quite a lot. So I'm going to apply it to all these other situations in my life as well. When I get really emotional or have an emotion I don't want to have or can't have or whatever, So, people don't like it when I say it, but I am grateful for it. And I don't hate it like a lot of sober people do. I get it, and you meet people and they're mean people, they're horrible people. And my question is always like, what's happening there?
Yeah.
What's making that happen for them? Because I don't believe inherently that, I know there are some people that do really evil things in the world, but I don't think that's most people. I really don't. I think that a lot of people are trying their best and they're making mistakes. And I think if we all really are honest with ourselves, we all make mistakes, all of us. good luck if you don't, because I'm watching.
We see you.
Yeah.
And
I'm
we don't
watching because I don't believe you.
Yeah. But also, when you said, what I thought was really interesting, when you said, most people don't like it when I say this, but like, I don't hate alcohol. I'm actually grateful to it. And for me, one thing that I feel I work a lot with my clients on, that I feel like you just demonstrated so beautifully, was that compassion for yourself when it comes to alcohol. Because, yeah, you could hate it, you could berate it, you could be like, we can get back into the blame cycle.
Yeah.
We can be like, it did this to me. But actually, you have the compassion and the understanding that at that period in your life, at that chapter in your life, your way of being able to regulate, albeit now you can look at it and be like, not the healthiest way, but that is what you chose. And for me, to hear that compassion come through, I feel like, I always say as well, like my community, they're going to be so fed up with me calling them this. But I won't say high achievers, I'll say overachievers, right? Yeah. So like that critique, that mean voice, that like constantly looking for what is wrong about yourself, it takes a hell of a lot of retraining to get to that space where you can be compassionate. So whilst if other people want to disagree in terms of when you we're here for it, right? It means you're doing something right when people disagree. That is what I really come to terms with.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, that self-compassion for you just feels like that shone through in that moment.
Yeah, and I mean, like, a lot of my clients will laugh at that because I bang on about compassion all the time, and quite a lot of the time it took me a few years to realize that it's like what's that monk's name, Dan Depandi, and he says that we tell our kids to concentrate but we never teach them how. And it's like, I spent a long time telling people, you need to be more compassionate for yourself, not realizing they just don't know how to do it. They've never done it before. So of course they don't know how to do it. It's an example of that is, you'll like this. This is a communication thing, right? So I was talking to a client a little while ago. It was a male client. And he said to me, my partner, she's terrible at communicating. I was like, interesting. Keep telling me more.
Yeah.
And he said,
let's break this down.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, she's really terrible at communicating. And he gave me loads of examples, right? And he said, you're not saying anything. I said, I'm listening. And he said, yeah, but you've got a look on your face. And I'm like, I'm just listening. That's my listening look, right? and he said, go on. I know you've got something to say about it. I said, well, I'm just curious. Like, I'm sure, unless I've got it wrong, that communication is usually takes two people. And he's just like, right. And I said, you talk about communicate. I said, but I need you to do me a favor. So what's that? I said, I need you to speak Chinese to me right now. And he said, what? And I was just like, I need you to speak Chinese to me right now. He said, I don't know how to. I said, yeah, but I want you to. He said, but I don't know. What are you doing, Johnny? I don't get it. Like, it's like, I want you to speak Chinese to me right now. He said, I don't know how to. I said, so you're telling me no matter how much I want you to, no matter how much I ask you to, you can't speak Chinese to me right now? He said, no. I said, imagine that's just communication in general. And he said, oh. I was like, we are all, when we're in relationships, right, we are all a sum of all of the previous experiences we've had, all of the other relationships we've had, all of the other conversations and people we've met over time, right? And whether we like it or not, they teach us things. Some of those things are really helpful. Some of those things aren't. Though, have you ever asked your partner how they would prefer to communicate? No. Right. I don't know if there's anything else I can say here. And he's like, I think I get what you're saying. I was like, good.
Can we please say amen? Because this, I honestly, one beautiful, I'm going to say technique in terms of you using.
I'd have been gutted if you could speak Chinese though. I'd have been straight on to Russian. I'd have just gone through the list.
You would have been ruined.
Yeah, I know. I'd have been like, damn it.
You'd be like, my smart coach.
Trying to have a Yoda moment.
But I honestly love that live example because actually it comes down to, of course, you knew I was going to love that because we don't ask. We expect people to be mind readers. We then want other people to communicate in the way that we want to.
I just want them to know what I want. All right.
Yeah, just, well, and
yeah.
It's an expectation that's assumed, creates so much miscommunication. Then in a bigger world, you're going to lead to conflict and we wonder why. And actually, if we just, I always say, because everyone says to me, Amira, like, if there's one thing you had to say or help people start from? What would be the starting point? And I was like, understand your dominant communication style or your couple, because we kind of have a blend sometimes. And then understand the one relationship in your life that you're really struggling to communicate, or you don't feel heard, or you don't feel seen. Now think about how they like to communicate and think about where you can adapt. Because unfortunately, you can't change other people. So let's turn it back on you. And I just think that is a beautiful example.
Yeah, I mean, you got to ask people how they prefer to be communicating. Like me and my wife working all the time. We've been married. We've been together for like 20 years. And
congrats,
even now, you know, I think she needs the medal. You know,
Teamwork.
Yeah. But, you know, we were always adapting. You know, she's had things change in her life recently, and that's taken us to have to reassess things. And, you know, she's had a few things around rejection that's been really difficult for her. So I want to make that easy for her. So I choose language that's a little bit more kinder, you know, in the sense of, not that I ever used unkind language, but, you know, language that she can understand a bit more, in the sense of that I'm not rejecting you. This is just something that's happening, or something like that. You know, it's just a language we use of each other. And it gets to the point where it becomes so playful. It's funny. So she'll know what I'm doing, and she'll smile straight away. And I go, I'm just trying to help. And she'll just go, oh, and it just diffuses it straight away.
I just love that she's really willing to receive it. I don't think my partner's at that stage. He looks at me and gives me the side eye. It's like, nah,
but it's I'm not doing it from a place, like we had the conversation. I'm not doing it from a place, because very early in my career, you know, we'd get into a disagreement and she'd be like, don't start coaching me. And I'd be like, well, you know, and she's right. Like, she's not a client, she's my wife. You know,
100%.
And there needs to be that respect there. You know,
100%.
I'm not going to sit there and psychoanalyze her, because it ain't going to work. First of all,
you're setting yourself up.
One way or another, I will pay. Like, so I'm trying to create harmony here, man. So let's just do that. You know, so yeah, you know, we are a team, and we've worked through some problems that I believe that, you know, very little couples that'll get through. It's some hard stuff in life that come up, you know, and we works on it. We're doing okay, you know, so we just keep going forward, and we move, you know.
Okay, on that then.
No.
I was like, you opened that door for me, okay. I was going to say, thinking about some of your challenges that you've both navigated together, what's one of the things that you're proud of, like from your side, that you've either done differently or took a different approach? Not necessarily like having to go into the detail, but something that you had to learn along the way, and you look back now in your relationship and think, God, I'm really proud of like how we did that, or how I approached that.
Trying to understand, I suppose, in a nutshell, compassion, trying to understand what the situation must have been like for her. Like, not just trying to understand towards the result. I mean, actually wanting to understand, actually go, how hard must that have felt for her to go through that? How difficult was that headspace? How impossible must that have felt? Like, trying to understand that, really understand it, not putting it on show. I mean, genuinely trying to get my head around it. That's what I would say was the thing that I've worked on.
No, I really love that. And I asked you because I thought that for somebody listening, they're going to need to hear like whatever was going to come out of your mouth.
It's not for show, man. And that's it. It's not for show. You're like, you have to want to know, and you have to be ready to accept the answer, even if you don't like it.
Yeah.
You have to be able to just sit there and go, okay, yeah. Because we get up in our feelings, don't we? No, and this is the ego, right? And the ego is not bad or good, but it is there to navigate us towards comfort and away from pain. That's what it's doing all the time, right? Now, what's comfortable is usually familiar, and what's familiar is not always good for us. So we navigate that direction, and their ego goes, no, you shouldn't let that person do that. You shouldn't do that. Wait a minute. What's being missed here is what you want, because your ego doesn't care what you want. It's just trying to bring you towards comfort, right? And then them two might be in conflict. So you have to remember all the time, okay, what do I want? Again, it's that change, right? Making the decision. What do I want? Okay, what do I want means I have to try and understand what this other person's going through. And if I can understand that, then I can start to get my head around the whole situation. Because just as the team said this morning, I didn't get up this morning and decide I'm just going to screw this up for you, you know? Do you know what I mean? So it's just like, you know, no one you know, we make mistakes and we find ourselves in bad situations, you know, and trying to understand how those mistakes happen, how that thought process was, how hard it must have been. All of that is helpful. And it's when you're in those situations, it's not about negative or positive. That's not helpful. It's about what is helpful and what isn't. And this is why I get challenged a lot on a lot of my theories and thoughts about things. And I'm not a one-trick pony. I don't have one size fits all to the way I coach. It's about listening for what's helpful, trying to help people figure out what they want, and then try to move them towards it. And when you say something is helpful or unhelpful, what you're doing is applying the context, which means that something can be helpful in one situation and unhelpful in another. You're not just eliminating one thing by calling it negative, you know?
Yeah.
You know? So it's important. It's the language, it's the way we think, it's looking at things, taking a matrix gaze, going up like a drone and overlooking your life and saying, okay, these are all these moving parts and cogs. And if we turn that, this is going to happen. You can't change anything without it changing many things. It's just the way it goes, you know? So
I love that, because actually I think in today's world anyway, where we're moving super quickly, to actually stop and try to get your head around and understand, especially in a relationship, how that experience could have been for them. Like, what did it feel like? What did it sound like? Like, what are some of the emotions they're dealing with? And it doesn't mean, I really loved when you said, no, like really trying to get my head around to understand. Because sometimes that's the piece that's missing, right? And then when you talk about ego, okay, we fall into right and wrong. It's like, if you're in that space, get out of it, okay? It's not helpful. But as soon as we're in it, you want that to be your flag. I say you always want to look for your red flags in those moments.
Self-perpetuating as well. The more you get up in that ego, the more the ego backs it up, and it's just, and before you know it, you're all up here, and you've got that white cold feeling that something's wrong and that you're messing up, but you can't get out of it now because you've doubled down so many times with your ego that you're just there, you know?
Right? And if I have to give, like, I'm going to add a layer to that, right? Because that's so important. And I talk about conflict a lot, and I think I need to find a different way of talking about it, because as soon as I say the word conflict, everyone switches off. But anyway, when we talk about friction, like, conflict doesn't have to be World War III, but anything that kind of unsettles you perhaps overthink. But when you say as well, like, that ego comes in, and then you're up here and you're like, I can't get out of this. And I always talk about conflict as in like 3 stages. So we all have a sequence, we all go through it differently. But once you move through to stage 3, your behavior is so irrational, it's incredibly difficult. Or it takes a lot more awareness for you to be grounded to say, okay, I'm in my irrational state of behaving. What is it that actually I needed when I first got upset or felt angry? And it's that piece there, because lots of people will say to me, I always say, like, when you're feeling, whatever you're feeling, because I feel like our whole entire thing today is around your emotions and understanding how to regulate them. And I actually want to ask you for a few tools in a second around it. But I think there's a piece around us not actually acknowledging how we feel, and because it's linked to that fear, or
we're having a secondary emotion, probably. Yeah.
Oh, so beautifully said.
Yeah, well, we're having a secondary emotion, which is a reaction to a primary emotion,
which links back to your first example you gave us in terms of the anger, but actually it could be that you're feeling embarrassed.
A primary emotion is an emotion about an event.
Okay.
So something happens and you have an emotion about it, but it's a very, very sensitive emotion.
Okay.
It's a very hard to have emotion.
Okay.
So I'm just going to have the secondary emotion instead, which is the emotion about an emotion. It's a less sensitive emotion. It's very easy to move towards because it's not quite as sensitive as this one that I don't want to have. You know, you have something like inadequacy, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you fancy being inadequate? I don't.
No.
Do you fancy being rejected? No.
I'll give it back to you.
No, exactly. So I'm going to have anger instead, because that's way easier and I can say stuff then. But all I'm doing now is making the problem worse, you know, and stuck in a cycle. So yeah. And like exactly as you just said, it's about recognizing that, wait, and this is the whole thing around like a trauma response. A trauma response is when you feel like you have to do it. That when you get triggered and you're like, nope, not going to happen, and you create chaos. That's a trauma response. And the practice there is practice not responding, not reacting, responding. And responding sometimes means I need to leave. I need to get away from this person. This person is bringing up all sorts of stuff. I might not understand it right now. Now's probably not the time to work it out either. So I'm just going to get away from this person and I'm going to calm down and I'm going to unpack it. it's like a life current, you know, it's coming up in you and it's making you feel like you got to do stuff, and you don't have to. It feels like you do so much, you know.
I just want to reiterate that so much, because when you're in that moment, especially when we talk about being triggered, especially if it's linked to a trauma response, and when you say in, you have permission to not have to deal with it there and then. And I think sometimes as well, we've got these misconceptions. I always say like myths that you need to think quickly on your feet. You need to answer in that moment. But actually, if you can find a way, I always say, I don't know if you agree with the way I'm going to describe it, but like interrupt your thought pattern.
Yeah.
To pause the reaction. You don't even need to get to the point yet where you're going to respond. I love when you said, take yourself out of the situation if you need to.
Yeah.
And I always talk about like my early corporate career and my poor bosses. I think I was just a nightmare to manage even. I hold my hands up and I think, oh, guys, I'm really sorry. But
can they do watch this? Look to the camera. I'm sorry.
Sorry, guys.
I love it.
But I really remember struggling with this piece, and I am sure people, I mean, I can probably own that like I was quite volatile because I think that I didn't have a good handle on my emotions. So my go-to was to react. And I remember when I started to entertain the idea of like, it's not working for me.
Did it feel like a reaction, or did it feel like you were defending yourself?
Oh, 1,000,000% defending myself, because that is 100% what Amira used to do. Amira was like defending, because at that time, my whole entire vision was, and I think actually having a business has been maybe the easiest way I was able to kick this. But at that time in my corporate career was, before the defensiveness, it was the perfection. I truly, truly believed. I remember I used to have a mantra stuck on my wall. I think I was like 21. This is so dangerous. Like, I had a belief, literally, because I had my mantras written down. And this sounds like quite, I'm going to have to give context around it. But anyway, it said, I am perfect, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't that I thought I was amazing and that, because it sounds very, very narcissistic when I say that out loud.
It doesn't, I get that.
Does that make sense? Because I was like, ooh, I think that needs context to it. But it was that I truly believed that I didn't need to make mistakes. I truly believed that I was going to go through life and have everything. And it goes exactly back to what we said at the beginning in terms of, I thought I could control. I thought I could show up like with everything always swimmingly well. And so the defensiveness would kick in when I felt critiqued, because I was like, you're now challenging my belief that I believe is to be true, that I'm perfect and my life can be perfect. Yeah. And if you critique that, you're also chipping away at my identity. And if I don't have that, I wouldn't know who I am. This is very, very deep.
No, I'm going to take it deeper.
And therefore, that's why I would defend myself. And therefore, that's why at the time it would come out as a reaction opposed to a response. And until I learned how to unpack all of that, is now why I don't always get it right, but I would say I honestly would say like I'm probably 10 times better. Like,
I mean,
sure.
I just want to hold a small moment of compassion for the person that set themselves up for failure, because we know perfection is impossible. So we set ourselves up for failure there, but you didn't know how to do it differently, you know? And I'm writing a book at the moment, and I love, well, it's not written yet and it's killing me, but I enjoy it, but it's just very difficult. Change is hard. Well done. You know, and it's challenging me in so many ways. I love it. But it's also challenging me to articulate what I think I know, you know? So here I am, and I believe that people pleasing is what it's often called, but that need, that compulsion to do something, that reaction, right, comes from, if we say we have need in the middle, right, and we can go either direction like a continuum.
Yeah. We
have need not getting met.
Yep.
Yeah, as the next step. Then the next step is an emotional reaction.
Yep.
Then we attach meaning to that emotional reaction. And we repeat that process so many times until it becomes a belief system. And then that reaction becomes our belief system. I have to do this now. It's a compulsion. I must do it. It's a fact. It's solid. It's stamped. It doesn't change, right? It can change, but we don't know it can. But if we go the other way, yeah, and we go, you have a need, and need gets met. We have an emotional validation, We apply meaning to that emotional validation.
Yeah.
We repeat that cycle over and over again. And then we create a belief system out of that. And that all happens in the first 7 years of our life. We learn all that from our parents. Thank you, parents. And they're only working with what they got, and that's the theory that I'm working on at the moment. I'm trying to find a way to articulate in the book. Hopefully that makes sense. If you're confused, then I need to work on it more.
I know you put humor in there, but I actually was going to say, I can't wait for this book. And I think that I echo, I'm not even going to go into this now, but I just really echo when you said it's challenging me to articulate what I know.
I think I know.
What I think I know.
Yeah.
And I was just going to add from like my experience, I know that I work really intuitively with my clients, and not about like whether I find it easy or hard, it's just how I work. And when they're with me in front of me, whatever comes up, I can work with it. But it's then actually what I found really helpful in what you described is being able to put like either a process or a cycle or an analogy to it, so you can understand actually what's happening and then look at the alternative way to do it.
Yeah, or the alternatives, just looking at many different options and not making one look more desirable than the other. Something that I had to work on early in my coaching career was when I feel something between me and a client, making sure that it's theirs, not mine. So when something comes up and I'm feeling something, because I'm intuitive as well, and so are you, making sure that this is their emotion, not my emotion. I'm having an emotion, I'm having a feeling here, my intuition's kicking off. Is it that, or is it just something that's harrowing on here that I feel close to? And that's when you have that trigger button pushed, right? And you want to go, don't let that person do that, and it's all your stuff. It's your stuff. Yeah. And I'm always aware of it now. And it's awareness. Another theory I'm working on is the 4 stages of behavioural change, and I believe that the first one's awareness. If you don't know what it is, you can't do anything about it.
You're going to operate blindly. You can't change something you don't know.
No, you can't. And then the next one's accountability, which is like not taking the blame. It's not you taking the blame. It's just, where am I waiting for somebody else to do something that I need?
Yes.
That I can do for myself. And that's the ego again. Oh, no, they should do that. You're probably right. They probably should do it, but they're not going to. And if you want it, you need to go and do it yourself.
And take your power back.
Yeah, take your power back. Exactly that. The next one's acceptance. So what can't I control here? What am I obsessing over that I can do nothing about? I just need to let go of. I need to free myself of it because it's taking up headspace, it's taking up time.
Your emotional energy.
It's killing me here, And then the last one is action. You put everything you draw a circle, you put everything in the circle that you can be accountable for, and everything outside the circle is what you need to accept. The stuff outside the circle, you just got to leave that alone. Focus on what's in the circle.
Honestly, I adore that. Also coming from a space where I used to have a belief where, in case you didn't realize, I'm a fighter. I've had to try and reframe that narrative, but I used to fight for like everything. Yeah. And I used to hate the phrase when people used to say to me, you have to choose your battles. And I used to be like, no, because this is important to me. Therefore, I'm going to fight for it and I'm going to advocate for it. And I love to advocate for people that don't have a voice.
Yeah.
No surprise, my business is built on talking. But what I had to really learn was that those circles of influence and actually what is in my control. And I think that the more you can focus on that, the more you also bring peace, like on a very core
That's
level.
the word.
Yeah. And if you can get to that, but that doesn't mean you have to be there all the time. And this is not me saying I don't ever get triggered or feel those emotions or go through difficult moments where I have to be like, oh, yeah. There's just space and resilience for me to be able to hold that now. But I think learning what is in my control, why is something important to me, and what can I do about it is a very peaceful way for me to be able to operate and helps my relationships.
It just stops you from, like I think spiraling is a term that gets bad-mouthed a lot. Oh, the client's spiraling. But I think spiraling is useful. As a matter of fact, I think it's necessary because I think you can spiral 2 directions, right? You can, most people will spiral. If you, as a coach, if you sit quietly and you listen, which is hard for some coaches, and you just let your client unpack it because that's what they're here to do. My best sessions I've ever had, I might have said 10 words. And they go, that was an amazing session. And I'm like, okay. It's because I held the space for them, right? I sat there and I said, I look at they've got they've got loads of shopping bags, right? And they need to get their keys out of their handbag. So I'm holding all their shopping bag so they can get their keys out of their handbag. That's the analogy I'm using, right?
I love
so
that.
I'm holding all them bags for them for an hour. Yeah. And they're going through their bag and they're looking for what they need. Yeah. And I've lost my train of thought now. What was I talking about?
It's funny because I was going to add on to that and just say, as a coach, because you was talking about your sessions and when, because I was going to say as a coach, one of, I think, the most important things is learning how to hold space, because you were saying that as a coach, your job isn't to talk too much.
Spiraling. That was it. Spiraling. So you have to give your client enough time to spiral in towards the solution. Spiraling in. Oh, that person said this, but actually, when I think about it, they probably didn't mean that. They probably meant this. Oh, now I feel a bit embarrassed. Oh, no, I probably shouldn't feel embarrassed because they did that last week. Blah blah. And they're working the problem out, and they're working it out, and they're moving towards the solution. The risk is sometimes when people spiral, they spiral outwards. And they make the problem bigger. And then they start making up stuff like, oh, they probably think this now. Oh, and if they think that, then so-and-so thinks that. I bet you they've gone home and told them, oh, that means that my boss is going to ask me about, oh, no, this is really bad. And it's just getting bigger and bigger based off of stuff that's not happened yet or may not ever happen. So it's watching. The only time I interrupt that spiraling process is if they're spiraling out. And I said, well, hang on. I just want to remind you that hasn't happened. Let's focus on that bit that you said there just then about them showing I'm listening.
Yeah.
And then they hear it and they go, okay, yeah. And I go, well, I'll ask a question. I'll say something like, what do you think that might mean? And then we get into the meaning of it and then we move them back in again, hopefully. And then sometimes it's just chaos and they're just not even spiraling. They're just squiggling on the page. And you're like, I'm here for that too. So
I adore that in terms of like being able to hold space. I think as coaches, I say like one of the most powerful things is to listen.
Yeah.
And especially when you have a client who actually that's spiraling inwards. I also say as well that in the long term, they're building their self-trust, because it's with, in time, not having the reliance on us as their coach, and then being able to realize I can do this. And actually I managed to join those dots. And actually I piece this and this together.
Yeah.
And that's when you're like, damn, yes, you got there. Like,
that's
this
what
is
we're
amazing.
doing. We're trying to reassure them. Like, we're not creating a dependency on us. What we're doing is we're using them as a real life example that they can manage their own life. It's what we're here to do. We're here to go, look, I love nothing more than congratulating a client on a change of behavior. And I guarantee every single time they haven't even noticed it. They didn't even notice they did it. They send me a text message and I say, this is progress. And they're like, question mark. And I'm like, and I go through it and they're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, yeah, you are changing. And that's why them 4 stages of behavioral change are important, because we don't always hit our targets, but I can guarantee you one of those 4 things is happening. You've become aware of something, you're taking accountability for something, you're accepting something, or you're taking an action, and that is good. Because it means you're still on the change path. It's something I can pick up and go, well, wait a minute, and they're like, oh, you're Miss Sunshine. And I'm like, yeah, I am. That's my thing. So, yeah.
Johnny, I feel like today we've literally just touched the tip of the iceberg. I feel like I could probably do another hour with you. So this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to leave the door open for part 2, whenever that is, because I feel like we're just getting started.
Oh, always. It's the same when you came on my podcast. I was like, I have more questions for you.
I have so many. So something I do with every single guest is ask 3 questions to wrap up our episode. Now, it can be anything you said before, or you can introduce a completely new thing. The floor is yours, okay? First question. Can you share with us, I always say your favourite quote or food for thought. And food for thought, I like to say, what's something our listeners can marinate in their mind and think about?
At the risk of sounding like a Disney character. Yeah, well, that's my secret goal.
Yes.
No, it's Henry Ford. Whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you are right.
The team literally approved of that.
No, it's true, man. It starts with, I think it's Jim Quick. He says that there's the limitless model, and he says that things break down either in your mindset, motivation, or your method. So how you think about something is how it is. If you are trying to lose weight, right, and you don't think you can do it, guess what's going to happen? If you think you can, then you will too. It just might take longer and the journey might not look like you want it to. It's simple.
I want to ad-lib, I'm not going to ad-lib, okay? I always have to force myself at this point of the episode to just be quiet.
Trauma response.
Johnny, you made me work hard today. Okay, a practical takeaway that our listeners can actually go and implement in their life.
Work on emotional regulation and do it by asking yourself questions. If you're angry, ask yourself, what are you angry about? Not why are you angry, because why will make you blame somebody. Ask yourself, what are you angry about? What is a more exploratory way of looking at things? It doesn't make you internalize quite as much and doesn't make you want to blame people either. What is a curiosity? You need more curiosity. If you're going to deal with emotions, you need to be curious. And you also need to be ready for what the truth is. Because it might be that you messed up. And that's okay, because you're not perfectionists. It doesn't exist.
I know this is not my episode, this is yours, but I really secretly hoped that when I asked that question, you were going to say about emotional regulations.
Yeah, emotional regulation. It's fine. Text in the post.
And then third and final question, a resource that you want to recommend. Now, it can be something that's helped you. It can be a book, a podcast, a film, a documentary, whatever you want.
Jordan Peterson. I know he's controversial, and no one's perfect, right? We've always spoken about that, but he has a beautiful way of explaining things that's very, very helpful. And if I'm going to be like opportunistic, my anger masterclass, my podcast, stuff like that, Go
for it. I'm also going to link all your resources in the show notes, okay? So guys, if you want to explore that, you want to work with Johnny, everything is going to be clickable, so check it out in the show notes. Johnny, I want to say thank you.
No, thank you.
I loved this conversation and I truly appreciate you.
I appreciate you too. Thank you.
Guys, thanks for joining us for another conversation this week. You know the deal by now, so please hit subscribe, leave a review. Don't forget to share this with a friend. And if you want to come and hang out with me, then click Instagram. You'll find me at _communication expert.